This is Srimati with Rachel Elnaugh here in London, and Rachel's agreed to meet me, which I'm delighted to meet you, Rachel, in the flesh after all these twitterings and tweets.
Yes.
And I recently read Rachel's book, which I thoroughly enjoyed, called Business Nightmares, and realised through reading that and through our correspondence on Twitter that actually we have some ideas in common, and I thought it would be a great idea to meet with Rachel, and yeah, we could just have some chats and share some ideas together.
Yes. So Srimati, tell me a bit about what you do, because when you kind of interact with someone on Twitter,
yes,
you kind of it's quite an interesting medium, isn't it?
It
because
is.
you sort of interact with someone without really knowing anything about them. Most of the people, unless obviously they're someone famous.
Yeah. Well, I run an inspirational coaching practice called Thrivecraft down in Devon. I'm based in Devon, and my expertise is in spiritual intelligence, and that's partly because I have a background in I was an ordained Buddhist, and so all those years and years of meditation and spiritual wisdom, we used to apply it to business, for example. And now I'm trained as a life coach, and I do a bit of coaching as well. And also, I think my main area of interest is working with what I call conscious entrepreneurs. So it's people who run businesses, but run them with heart and soul.
Because there's a big shift, isn't there? And I've noticed this going on with lots of people that I come into contact with, that there is this kind of awakening that people aren't just doing business for money anymore at all.
Right.
But they're still...
That's okay, we don't mind.
And it's interesting because when I go out and speak at events, because I'm quite into all this thing about energy and law of attraction and the kind of wider, kind of energetic ways of working. And when I go and speak at events, I always kind of put those things into what would be a business topic.
Interesting.
And judge the reaction. And so increasing the audiences, whereas if you get a very male corporate audience, they tend to sort of stiffen, and the barrier goes up. Whereas a lot of the entrepreneurial audiences, particularly female ones, you get this sort of
twinkle.
And it's sort of, oh, well, she's into that too.
That's so interesting, because yesterday I was speaking at a social enterprise conference, and I thought, do I talk about it? I told people about the law of attraction. I spoke about inspiration being the fuel to ignite action. And several people, and this was after 2 politicians spoke in a row, which they were interesting talks, and I thought, well, don't I actually reveal this? And people were coming up to me afterwards saying that was great, and they had a real spark in their eyes, and they found it really refreshing, and I found that really interesting, and to hear that you've been doing similar. And I think the whole subject is actually quite magical. There's a sort of magic to it, which is quite, I think it's quite inspirational for an entrepreneur that you can attract amazing stuff. And if I look back in my own life at some of the things that have happened to me, that have kind of come through just setting an intent, but very gently. It's very counterintuitive, because most people are taught, like, if you want something, you have to be willful, really push and go for it in a really kind of hard way. Whereas it actually works with the softest touch, and it's very counterintuitive. Well, it's trying too hard. Sort of, I manifest this. I've got to manifest this, and it doesn't seem to work. It puts an opposition into the mix. I was talking about this recently with Nick Williams. That's Nick Williams of InspiredEntrepreneur.com, and exactly that. And we were wondering if perhaps, or I was suggesting that there's perhaps maybe there's the kind of reclamation going on of a more feminine wisdom. Which means one can, that's men and women equally, can reclaim one's receptivity as well as one's more active side in business.
And I've actually gone down that route, and you do get tremendous barriers coming up the minute you say feminine, because people instantly think she's a man-hater, male versus female, and they don't understand that it's totally not not about gender.
Right.
It's just about, we have had a very masculine way of doing
Yes.
business for many decades.
Yes, we have.
And I think it's really shifting towards a much more nurturing,
Yes.
feminine, caring, ethical, honest, open way of doing business, which is not just about making money and
That's right.
buying a Ferrari.
And while I guess it's not about jettisoning the positive masculine way of doing things either, it's just about reintegrating what's perhaps been lost in our culture.
Yeah, definitely.